The Brisbane Lions Fancast wouldn't be possible without our 2024 sponsors, Hop On Brewery Tours and Crisp Communications. Hop On Brewery Tours give you the chance to learn and experience some of the best craft breweries across Brisbane and the Gold Coast. Check them out and book yourself a tour right now at hoponbrewerytours.com.au. And Abby and the team at Crisp Communications, not only are they going to get you some Brisbane Lions Fancast stickers, but they can help you out. If you're in business and you need a marketing push, you need help with your digital marketing, your very own podcast, whether it's stickers for your own business, they offer it all. Web design, podcast management, social media, training and coaching, it's all available at crispcoms.co. Make sure you check out Abby and the team because they will get you everything you need to get your business skyrocketing. All right, let's get into the show.
Lohman steps around, bends at goalward, and slots it through. Brilliant from Brisbane. Big chance for McCluggage, and that is 6 unanswered goals in short time here in the first quarter for the Lions. Forward. That's a beautiful ball to Charlie Gabba. I reckon he might go. He's got some wheels. Braun did well to get a glove on him, but Charlie was always going to get that one home. And Bruce gets his first goal in AFL football. That's special. Archie over the top. Lohman front and centre. The Brisbane Lions are going to get it to me. And Logan Morris stole it from Charlie. Charlie saying, what are you doing there?
The Brisbane Lions Fancast is back after a very, very heavy win against the Richmond Tigers at the Gabba on Saturday. 119 points. Everyone contributed. It's going to be, in a weird way, a very hard game to really have a chat about because Richmond are in dire straits at the moment, and whilst it was good to walk away with a big win in the 4 points and a healthy percentage boost, on one hand, I feel a little bit sorry for what Richmond's going through. On the other hand, they've got 3 flags to go home and comfort themselves with, so you know what? All's fair in love and war. Patrick, you watched the game from your comfort of your living room. I was at the freezing cold Gabba. How did it look from your end?
Freezing cold, you reckon?
Freezing cold for Queensland conditions.
Was it bit 18 degrees or something?
Bit of wind around. It was just heavy wind.
Yeah, fair enough. That wind does get a bit bitey, as it were. No, it was obviously cold in the living room, but, you know, it was all right. Yeah, it was... I don't know, these games where you absolutely wrought them are just a bit like, oh, yeah, that's happening. Yeah. And you're kind of sitting there like, I just sort of didn't want them to score because I was like, every goal that they score is annoying.
Yeah.
And, you know, that sort of thing. But, yeah, what really more can you ask for? I think it was I'll put it this way. I really, really wish this game had come before the Adelaide game.
Sure.
Because this just would have leveled. And I know that sounds stupid, but, like, this kind of eliminates all of the issues that kind of were there for the Adelaide game in terms of, like, lack of cohesion and the backup stuff. And, yeah, there were times there where, you know, Richmond were kind of putting a bit more pressure on than you kind of would have liked, and their goal kicking was awful. But, like, I just think this game was a really good settler for a lot of the fringe players coming in. So I wish it had been last week and we had played Adelaide this weekend because I think we would have won. But here we are, and we're only really sitting a win and a half outside the 8 now.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of good teams that are only a win and a half ahead of us now. So...
That's true. We've got the chance over the next couple of weeks to even the ledger before we head into the bye and, you know, build a sort of foundation for the rest of the season. It was one of those games where you're really just looking for the cherry on top of what was already a pretty complete game. It's sort of like, all right, well, let's just, you know, keep the foot down is a big thing that the Lions haven't been able to do over the last few years. We, you know, generally will drop off for big periods of time and not necessarily let them back into it, but drop our bundle for, you know, like good periods of time. Well, there was a few moments where we dropped off the pressure a little bit, but it didn't seem to last any more than sort of 5 minutes before we kicked ahead again. The other really pleasing thing is our accuracy in front of goals, which has been obviously pretty woeful this year, was outstanding on the weekend, which was really, really good to see. You know, Kai 5 goals, Charlie 5 goals, Lomo kicked another couple, Rayner kicked 3, which made his game look a little bit better than it really was, I think. The only real disappointment, and aside from him getting suspended, as I thought Eric Hipwood probably could have used this game to join in on the party a little bit more than he did as well. His defensive tackle, which has earned him a week, was really fantastic. The defensive effort there, and his goal from outside 50. He had another shot very soon after as well that he sprayed. So he was probably the only forward that really missed out on dining out on an undermanned Richmond.
Some people might say his suspension is the cherry on top.
Yes, and look, I've had a few discussions over the week on Twitter with a few people because I posted that clip of us talking about Eric Hipwood, and people have come for him. They want him dropped. Then I said, well, there you go. He's dropped himself now, and we're going to get a look at probably Darcy Fort. I'm probably be more inclined to choose Brandon Ryan just to see what he's got, but we will get to that a little bit later on when we.
Hey, Brandon Ryan at least will be playing against the old club.
That's true. We will. We'll get to the changes a little bit later on, but let's get back to the game. What the only change that we sort of foresaw was Pryor out, Noah Answorth in. That was the only change, and that was good. Noah had a good game. Jackson Pryor was obviously the travelling emergency because he didn't play VFL, so he was on hand should he needed to be.
Yeah, well, during the week, I think Dev Robb kind of appeared to be closer than we probably thought, and that didn't eventuate. I thought he might come in for Reville, but I'm glad that he didn't, just for the sake of getting more minutes into the Big Bruce. So, yeah, just Pryor that came out, which is what we thought. Answorth came in, and I mean, really not a lot to say about the team. It was kind of what we thought it was going to be, and they all kind of ran around. But when do you reckon it would be the last time we kicked at least 5 goals in a quarter? Every quarter?
Every quarter?
Like
I don't know.
Not to put you on the spot, but,
it would be a while. I mean, that's the first game we've hit 100 points in a long time as well, probably since the Port Adelaide final. Maybe, I don't know if we hit it against Carlton in the prelim last year, but it's certainly the first time this year we've hit 100 on the scoreboard, which was nice. But yeah, 5 goals in a quarter, couldn't tell you.
Funny you mentioned Port Adelaide. Did you notice the score?
Yes, the exact same as that infamous 2007 grand final, which is a nice little nod to history, I suppose.
Yes, I saw a great picture of David Koch having Vietnam flashbacks, so it was great, beautiful, loved it. It also introduced me to the idea of scorigami, which I'd never heard of, but I'm all for now, so love that. Which for the people that have no idea what that is, it's just the idea of scores that have never happened in football, and it was like, no, it's not a scorigami. This happened in the 2007 grand final once.
I mean, all in all, it was a great week for Queensland football, with the Gold Coast hitting 164 points on the board as well. So, for another weird little stat for you, that is the highest score from any two interstate teams in a combined round of football for any two combined teams. So, West Coast and Fremantle haven't scored that heavily in the round together. Neither has Adelaide, Port Adelaide. So, yay for us in that respect. And good on the Gold Coast with a big win against the Cats on Thursday. So, things looking up for Queensland footy.
Yeah, Gold Coast absolutely unbeatable in Darwin.
Yes.
Like, what the hell? Yeah,
and I'm glad because up until Thursday, I was saying that the best game the Gold Coast have ever produced was against us at Metricon last year. But now we can safely say that game on Thursday night was the best they've ever played. So we can wipe that one. But let's get back to the Lions and the Tigers. They, it must be said, they are absolutely struggling. Not only coming down from a tremendous era of winning flags, the natural trajectory of having to blood kids and stars retiring and all that sort of stuff, but their injury list is cooked, and they got another 2 from the game just gone, and then Sam Naismith in the VFL's done another ACL as well. So it just keeps getting worse for those guys.
Yeah, before the game, they went through the injury list. There's a lot of people that no one's ever heard of. I'll give them that.
Yeah,
and they kind of went through it on Fox and said that they were missing 9 walk-up starters, although that was Dermot Brereton's analysis, which could be incorrect or correct, so make of that what you will. But probably worth noting that we actually are also missing 8 walk-up starters. So, I'm all for the idea of they're missing a lot of players and they're missing a lot of VFL players, but a lot of them, you're like, who the hell is that guy?
Yeah.
Whereas we're missing actual players. So, and I know they're missing Taranto and Hopper and Tom Lynch and stuff like that. You know, they're missing quite a lot of their top end as well. But so I think it's kind of the sort of thing that if everyone was all kind of there, would it all kind of have evened out anyway? Possibly. So, you know, injuries happen and we've got it as bad at probably a worse time because it doesn't really matter if you're not expecting to do shit. Like,
that's true. But
I'd rather have yeah.
The silver lining, and as Fags touched on it on an interview on SEN this morning, is that, you know, it's sort of forced his hand to select these kids, and, you know, it means we're getting game time into Bruce, into, you know, Harry Sharp's getting, you know, a couple of regular games now as well. Kai Lohmann has got a real extended runner, and, you know, that spot is definitely his now. You know, Logan Morris and his you know, workload is going to have to increase next week as you know, he's going to get a better defender. Shadow Brain gets games as well. It's, you know, the silver lining is that we can use this period of time to develop these kids, get game time. And, you know, one of the more pleasing things on Saturday night is Bruce Revel getting CBAs in the fourth quarter as well.
That is a good point. I didn't actually realise that. So
that's just ridiculous.
I mean, I'm all for it, and I've said, and I said at the beginning of the year, like I would be more happy with us rotating it. And last week, I think I sort of said the idea of you're kind of increasing the value of these players if you're playing them. You know, they're not. I mean, to us, you know, because there are a lot of people that were thinking Kai Lohmann was the greatest thing since sliced bread, given that he hadn't played a game. And it's like now that he's played a few games, he's pretty good, and a lot of other people will think he's pretty good too. And I think there's definitely like. Not all of these players are necessarily going to factor into the club's future, but they might. And if they don't, at least now, as I said last week, they're going to be turning third-round picks into seconds or, you know, seconds into not early first, but late first or things like that, you know. And I know that might be a bit vapid, but it's good. It's largely good. So the game on the whole, there's just a lot of people scored a lot of goals.
Yeah, 12 individual goal scorers, plenty multiple goal kickers. You know, Joe hit 3, I think, in the end as well. He certainly dished off a couple, which I'm sure David King will like.
Oh, that was I mean, I ended up listening to that afterwards, and it was sort of, you know, the sort of thing where if he had tried to hand it off a la Nakai Kokosu and it didn't work, it would be like, you're the man, you were brought in to be the man. And now it's like, no, not the case. I did see a little thing having breakfast yesterday, a little snippet from the footy show where... not Campbell Brown, Nathan Brown. He he showed a clip of David King being like, oh yeah, like Footy Classified last week was just a bit reheating old soup. And they had a supercut of him saying like
the same thing that he does on First Track on Monday Means Test.
First Track and Means Test. And I was just like the same words.
Yes.
And I'm like, come on, man. I reckon like David King says some good things, but I think that he would be the people in the media, I don't think really very much like him because he's got this whole like the best analyst in the game, and I just don't think he is.
No, I don't think so.
And I don't think a lot of people think he is. Unfortunately, the analysts can be a bit hot and cold. I actually think Matthew Lloyd is pretty good, but then he goes and says something absolutely insanely dumb, like Harris Andrews isn't having a good season, and he's like the number 1 ranked defender, and it's like, that one went under the radar for everyone. It's like, you know, stick to your good stuff and leave the other stuff out. But anyway, they scored a lot of goals. David King can sod off. Funnily enough, Charlie Cameron, 5 goals, none of them set shots.
I know.
And they didn't, because he didn't have any set shots, they didn't get the opportunity to put up the graphic of what his score from set shots were. Because I was like, can't wait to see it. Like, because they had Danaher's and they had everyone. Yeah. And I was just like, nah, didn't have it.
And you know what? He could have had one in I think, was it the last quarter? Him and Logan Morris basically marked the same ball before.
No. So Charlie Cameron completely missed the mark.
Yeah, okay.
If Logan Morris wasn't there, that goes straight through his hands. And I hope that the coaches have a word to Logan Morris and say, yes, go for that ball. Because... Charlie Cameron seemed to have some pretty odd body language there of being like, oh, get out of my way kind of thing. And it's like, nah, you would have dropped that mark. And I'm glad Logan Morris was there to take the slips catch and wheel. So, Charlie Cameron, don't be a knob.
It was good for him, though, to get on the scoreboard as well. I mean, he did the press conference in the lead up to the game. He's had a He's been talking about his slow start to the year and, what he thinks he needs to do to fix it and how he's been in his head a little bit too much and his confidence, all that sort of stuff. So good for him to reap the benefits scoreboard-wise on the weekend. So really great for him. Like I said, it was just a bit of a shame that Eric didn't feast on the scoreboard. He definitely did some great things. His work up the ground, his defensive intent was all there. Just missed out on the chance, like everyone else, to put through a few goals, which is a bit of a shame because I think that would have done him the world of good in terms of confidence. Yeah,
I think in a game like that, sometimes just the ball's going to different people. Like he didn't seem to be being targeted quite a lot inside forward 50. I thought his field kicking was really good, Eric's, up the wing. He was able to kind of like ping it out the back and drop it almost on a dime. So, I mean, that was one of the things that stuck out for me watching the game at the time because, he didn't really impact in terms of disposal. But let's have a little look here. But, yeah, sometimes it's a microcosm of, like, not everyone's going to be able to score a million goals in a game. So, make of it what you will. He actually was, funnily enough, he was our 7th highest meters gained player, despite being our, quite low on the old disposal front. So he took a lot of meters from his disposal.
Yeah, good on him. We're obviously going to be without him for the Hawthorn game, which is going to be a bit of a pisser, structure-wise, if nothing else. So we're going to have to figure that one out. In terms of the back half, I thought Connor McKenna played a better game, still without being great and not living up to what we know he can produce, but it was definitely an improvement on last week. Less sort of rush dump kicks, and what, like you've been saying over the last 12 months, is we didn't need Harris to have a huge impact on the game or Jack Payne. They did their bits when they needed to, but they weren't stand out like they were last week. So really good for those guys to have good games without having to have the whole game rely on their output because the ball, rarely went down there.
I'm assuming you didn't rewatch the whole game, right? Because that would be kind of... I mean, did you?
No.
Yeah. The commentary were really, really high on Marlon Pickett and his game on Harris Andrews.
Really? How many frees?
Loved it.
How many frees did Marlon Pickett give away?
Lots, and he was not good.
But
they were like, "Oh, he's done such a good job on Harris," and it's like, "Oh man!" Like all he was doing was pushing him under the ball and trying to high shot people.
Yeah.
Same with Toby Nankervis. Like Nankervis tried to line up Logan Morris, and then in the next passage of play, killed his friend, and it's like, just chill out, Toby. Like you're not even a good player, and you never even really were in the premiership years. How are you captain?
It's ridiculous.
Sort it out, Toby.
Could definitely be the worst captain running around in the AFL at the moment. Time to make that switch. What else?
Dusty off with the wind.
Yeah, Dusty's done. Unfortunately, I want to see him get to the 300, and he's only 3 or 4 games away from that. But yeah, if he plays on next year, I'll be bloody surprised. I mean, there might be a club like the Gold Coast that throw a little bit of money at him to go there for a year or whatever. But I mean, he's well and truly cooked. Like Jaden Short, they had so many premiership players. They had 11 premiership players still playing that night. But is Jaden Short the case of just being a good player and a good team? Because he won a BNF in their premiership, one of their premiership years. He was garbage.
I mean, this is kind of the old thing, and I know you're not a big fan, but I know you don't have the same level of kind of meme quality as Tim Notting. But it's the difference between when the premiership stars all go, and I know you just said Jaden Short won a BNF, but when you're left with Tim Notting being your senior player, it's your team's probably not ticking. So it's when he's your role player and now so that's probably where they're at. I found it funny that they had guys like Shea Bolton and other Rioli running around doing some pretty cool stuff, and then just their disposal would just get immediately turned over, and it's you can't do everything, you muppets.
Yeah, it's I've never seen a player that has gone from 0 to 100 and then back down to low 20s, and Shea Bolton. He had one extraordinary year a couple of years ago, and then he's just dropped off so much since then. It's crazy to watch the weird development of him.
Well, I think it's kind of, there's an element as well with him. Like, he's obviously got talent. I think he's got a lot of like brain issues. He makes poor decisions. But I'd almost like, there's probably an element, and I know this might be a bit unpopular, but like there's an element with like Nick Dacos, say, where I think that he would struggle in a team that isn't winning or isn't like playing in a way that would facilitate his game style. And I know you can say chicken and the egg, like, oh, he's playing a lot better and they're winning, Collingwood. But I think it's like Collingwood are playing a lot better and it's facilitating him to be able to do the shit that he does really well. And I think if Nick Dacos wasn't playing in like a high pressure, dump disposal from the opposition with a lot of people facilitating his game, I don't think he'd be quite as good. And that'll be one to watch in his career. But I think that's probably where Shea Bolton's at the moment, where there's only so much that you can do with like elite speed and elite talent in a team that kind of isn't really working, and you're not like the main cog in that system. So maybe that, but people still think he's the most naturally talented guy in footy, and maybe he is. I think his mentality and his kind of ethic is not for me, but
yeah, it's hard.
We probably don't need to absolutely nail nails into the Richmond coffin, but it is kind of fun, isn't it?
I mean, yes, it is, and it's a bit of a strange one because us and Richmond have had some pretty like heavy hitting games over the last however many years with a lot on the line, and at the end of the day, they won the ones that mattered. We got them in a couple of finals, the qualifying final in 2020, the elimination in 2022, and those were like good battles. Like we had a pretty good rivalry happening with Richmond during those years when they were winning flags. They obviously went on and won it all in 3 out of 4 of those years. And I remember watching that Amazon documentary, was it Making Their Mark, the AFL one? And, Dimmer really used to rate our team during that time as well. He said, I think these guys are the best team in it aside from us. And, he really built up that rivalry as well. And then it moved from Brisbane and Richmond to now this Brisbane-Melbourne rivalry that we've built up over the last couple of years. If fingers crossed, if we remain competitive for a few more years, if that will stay with Melbourne for a bit more, if it'll, evolve into something with, say, Sydney or GWS or Carlton, it'll be interesting to see how that happens. But yeah, it's still a good feeling to beat Richmond, especially hand them a big whack. But yeah, at the same time, there's a little bit of a not hollow feeling, but I guess it's just sort of like, well, this isn't the Richmond that we know over the last 5-6 years. This is a different Richmond. This is the 2007-2008 Brisbane Lions.
Yeah, and I feel kind of bad for Adam Uze to a degree because I think he's just like collateral damage and all this. I said last week, but it's like, Damien Hardwick absolutely sold this club up the river last year. Taranto and Hopper are fine. They're not there, obviously, but like, you're not. I don't know. Let's not go into it. I was very strong about Damien Hardwick leaving at the time, and I think that those comments that I had made at the time have aged like a fine wine comparative to some of the other people that were saying, "Oh, he's done a good job and he tried his best." It's like, nah, he screwed you over, and he wanted what he wanted.
I mean, it's hard to tell, like whether he generally thought, they were still contending, and they still made finals in 2022. They weren't going to do any damage, just a bit like us. We made it through to a prelim, but it just gives you that little bit more respect for the Geelongs and Sydneys that can just keep staying up there. Richmond have gone they keep comparing it to the Brisbane and Hawthorn models of go in, win the flags, and then dip out, which is exactly what they've done. We know exactly now, whereas Geelong, Sydney, they just stay up there and up there and up there, and it's so. Brendan Gale and Damien Hardwick and Neil Balmer all wanted that for Richmond and tried to do that by getting Taranto and a Hopper in and thinking that was going to be enough, and a few little other bits and pieces here, but you still got to be able to draft along the way and attract good trade targets and free agency targets and stuff. It hasn't happened for them. But
I think it's a little bit like it's a bit unfair to kind of lump Brisbane in with the Hawthorn, that kind of model, because it was sort of, it wasn't necessarily, it was a strategy for us. We just had a lot of players that were all the same age following the merge that all dropped off at more or less the same time.
Yeah.
So we lost all of our top end talent. I don't think it was necessarily like we were like, yeah, we're going to go, and then everyone's going to die.
No, I don't think anyone. I don't think anyone plans for that. I think everyone.
No, but I mean, you kind of can though, because I don't think people would have expected Nigel Lappin to play like basically 10 games in his last sort of 3 or 4 years. But like, and I'm not saying he's the only one, but we also got caught up in the whole, the expansion clubs just like taking old draft picks and stuff like that. So maybe that's what they're talking about. But Sydney kind of always were there. Geelong, I guess. I don't know. I just feel like it was the style at the time. We just never came up because we just didn't have a good list, really, at any point since then. So
and obviously a harder club to attract people to go interstate to a non-footy state if you want to be competitive when we're not winning games as well. So it's a tougher situation in that I thought Richmond would have definitely a bigger enticement package. Come to Richmond, look at the success we've had over the last however many years, but it's going to be difficult for them. As same with Hawthorn, and Hawthorn, they got people like Chad Wingard in and Jarman Impey and a few little other players, and they probably thought, yeah, Hawthorn, look how well they've been going. You can't wait to be part of this successful club, and it won't be long before they're back up there again. But it's certainly not happening at the moment, and we're going to come up against them next week, and a little bit worried. So, yeah, that's we'll get to that in a little bit, but. We've barely spoken about the game, but I just sort of don't really know what there is to speak about because it sort of felt like, a lot of people are comparing it to a training drill, and it seemed like a bit of a formality in the end. I was pretty confident heading in. I went down and sat next to Andy and Deb, and Andy's like, how much are we going to win by today? And I said, I'd say 40 minimum, and I certainly didn't expect it to be 119. So really good because... Like I said, we kept the foot down. We, blitzed him every quarter. Showed very little signs of slowing down. The only sort of worry was that McCluggage went off with a precautionary calf tightness, so we'll have to keep an eye out through the week. It was interesting in the press conference that Fags said, I was Josh Dunkley's 150th, and we all wanted to play like Josh Dunkley this week. It's ultimate team man and blah blah blah. It's like, well. If he's all those things, why don't you want to play with him like every week, not just this week? That would be good because if it's yielding 119-point wins, maybe try and do that most weeks.
I would agree. And also the cynic in me would say, like, it's good that it was a training drill because they barely trained. So have that. Oh, God. No, yeah, like, good to get the win. It's amazing Dunkley's only played 150 games because he strikes me as quite a durable player.
He had a fair amount of injuries early on at the Dogs.
Okay. Yeah, because I know he played in the Premiership.
Yep.
As like maybe a first year or something like that. But because he's played, is that fewer games than McCluggage?
I think so.
Yeah, weird. Well, that's good. Good for longevity. But yeah, like I think just generally the team played pretty well all over the place. It's hard to really. I thought Logan Morris was having a quiet game up until half time, and then he sort of just came to and was really good. So yeah, top marks, good stuff, everybody.
Yeah, the few and you spoke about this off air as potentially what should be the goal of the year is that nice little bit of team play with Harry Sharp just sprinting up the wing, just dodging, I think it was about 3 or 4 Richmond players in the end, taking a few bounces.
I like that he took on the apparent physical freak and better athlete than Alex Rance and the second coming of Jesus, Noah Bolter, and was just like, I'm having you. Bounce and sat him down. Loved it.
Yep. Lace out kick to Bruce, ended up in was a Kai Lohmann goal that it ended up in.
Where he abided by the snap zones for that one, so that was good. Didn't like the first one. Yes,
yeah. Very much not a fan. And I was having a chat to the people that sit on the other side of me. We both were like, not a big fan of Kai hitting the snap on the left, 10 metres out, almost directly in front. I mean, it went through, so you can't really complain too much about it. But at the same time, it's like, come on, man.
If I'm going to be critical of Harry Mackay for doing that, then I'm going to be critical of Kai Lohmann for doing that. It did not abide by the snap zones.
It did not.
So, no good. But he did kick 5 goals, so fair enough.
He's
and a couple of good snaps from the snap zones.
Yes. Yeah, big time. The one immediately after was definitely well within snap zone limitations. So, and he bloody loved that goal, didn't he? He's quickly turning into a Tom Papley, that little fella Owies from Carlton in terms of over celebratory.
Don't put Owies in this. I fucking hate Owies.
Yeah, and I'm not a big fan of him and Papley, the way they carry on, like every goal is the last goal in a grand final, but Kai Lohmann's slotting into that sort of category as well, but good on him. He brings energy to the team, so it's what we need.
Yeah. Would you like to do some votes?
I'd love to do some votes for hopperonbrewtours.com.au. Book yourself a half or a full day tour right now online and visit some of the best breweries across Gold Coast and Brisbane. All right, for me, Lachie Neale gets the 3, Zorko gets the 2, and I'm going to give the little over-celebrated Kai Lohmann the 1 because 5 goals, that was really his coming-of-age game. Thought Neale was back to his best, especially that first half. He was just about everywhere, and his kicking was really noticeably really, really good on the weekend. Granted, he seemed to have a lot of time and space to deliver those kicks, but his efficiency by foot has been one of his weaker points across his career, but I thought it was right up there on the weekend, and Zorko would have to be leading the best and fairest at this stage of the year. You'd have to think he's 35, but at this stage might be playing on next year with the way he's going about it. That move to half back has been a good one, you would have to say.
Yeah, I think it's probably it's yielding fewer defensive frailties, I think, now that they're kind of locked into something a little bit more, so that's good. I've kind of gone not different. I went for Kyle Lohmann with the 3 because, 5 goals, 1, efficient, whatever. I love that. It's good. I went Neale the 2. It was a bit weird watching on TV. It seemed like Dunkley was pretty impactful, but I think Lachie just having like 700 goal assists, and I think he had a pretty good game. So Kai 2, Lachie 1, and I'm going Harry Sharp 1 just for that run.
Yeah, and Moddy produced one a little bit later on in the game as well that was almost rivaled it. So I know I thought of you as soon as those 2 ones happened. I was like, oh, Patrick's going to be all about this one. The running bounces, fantastic.
Hell, I'm pretty sure we saw Lachie Neale take a bounce.
Yeah. And when does that happen?
Yeah. Now that'll be a point of contention within the wider AFL, but yes, those are the votes.
How about just quickly Bruce's first goal? Just tapped it from 50 and it went through post height.
Bruce Revel with a missile like right foot that just straight through. Brilliant. Loved it.
It was funny because obviously he put that through, and then you could sort of like feel the crowd waiting around to hear what his goal song was going to be, and it was not like immediately recognizable. So that was a bit of a pisser. You just hope for something a little bit more iconic. I know you
basically turned my ears off.
Yep.
So I got to say though, I wanted to bring the cornrows back.
Yeah.
Like I think they look cool.
It must take a serious amount of work, I would imagine.
Yeah, well, put the work in. You're not in the VFL anymore, man. Haven't you seen like Isaac Quaynor and Frederick? They all just look really sharp. Anyway, let's move on. I don't want to talk about hair, so...
Fair enough. Well, we have got a few questions this week. I mean, the last couple of weeks, we haven't really had time to sort of facilitate questions because we've had the sort of last game on a Sunday, the early Monday morning recording. So, thanks to Crisp Communications, crispcoms.co, who are giving you your free Brisbane Lions Fancast stickers. Don't worry about that. BrisbaneLionsFancast.com if you want to check that out and get yourself a sticker. Or... if you need any sort of marketing for your business, Crisp Communications will bloody get you sorted, whether it's digital marketing or you've got your own podcast. Hit up the Abby and the team at Chris Comms to get you sorted. All right, questions. Ross, finally, a 4-quarter game. Lovely. Do you think they are back? As injured, return after the bye, who do you think will drop out? Is the first goal now just to make the 8 and we go from there? So there's a few questions wrapped into one there. So let's break it down there. Do you think we are back is, I guess, the big question.
I mean, what do they say? Form is temporary, class is permanent, or something along those lines.
Yep.
We've got a lot of unproven fellas, but I mean, I think there's an element where we probably need to manage our expectations generally for the season, but it doesn't mean like the way some of the other teams are going. And I said last week, I said every team has basically been terrible at some point in time. And I said, with the exception of Sydney. Wow. I did not remember that Sydney got beaten by Richmond.
Every week that goes by and Sydney just assert their dominance and Richmond just fall further into the mire, it makes that game look like such an anomaly. It's crazy to think that happened.
Yeah, like I think it's funny because if you look at it, like we're one of the kind of, if you look at the last 3 weeks, we're one of the quote unquote form teams of the competition. So it's like pretty weird. Manage our expectations, but I think that like there are games we probably should win most of our games in the back half of the season. That's kind of the way that we should be looking at it. And I think that would be the way that we would be looking at it if we had this team from the beginning. Like, we might not win all the games, but I sort of went through them and was like, I'm not going to tell you what I thought, but if you can get away with, what's the second half of the season? Like 13 games?
Yeah, give or take.
Yeah. And we've won 4 now. So like if you can win 10 games, 10, 11 games, drop 2, like, you won't beat Collingwood at the MCG, but you should be trying to win all the other games, surely.
I mean, you should be trying to win all of them. Whether you do or not is a different question.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Let's not get technical about it. So I do think that, there's probably an element of like, we're trying to get into the 8, but with the breakaway team, like, it's there in terms of they're all beating each other and they're all taking points off each other. And because we've got a hard draw, we're playing a lot of these teams. So there will be a lot of 8-pointers happening again and again and again. So, I think making the 8 is probably more attainable than it was even a week ago.
Yeah. I mean, I hope you're right. The other part of his question that was thrown in there as well, and it sort of feeds into what Neil has said on Twitter as well. How tough are our selection headaches going to be in the next few weeks' time? I hope we stick with the new kids as much as possible. Sort of fits into what Ross was saying there is, we got players coming back, Bailey, Ashcroft, probably the big 2 that will be coming back over the next few weeks. Ashcroft's finally got a timeline. So he's looking about round 16-ish. But Bailey is probably the immediate one that's going to come back in very, very shortly. And Dev is thereabouts. Do we stick with these kids or... I mean, I know Bailey will come back in at the expense of someone. But yeah, we've finally got a few selection headaches and our depth is being tested. Over the next few weeks... Call it up until round 16. Say, Ashcroft's coming back in a couple of weeks' time with Bailey and throw up some other names, if you will. Who do you think makes way? Do you stick with the Bruce or a Shadow Brain, or are they, last ones in, first ones out?
Well, I'd say, like, you're not going to bring, like, Bailey in to put him on as the... I'd say probably for this week, Bailey they could even bring him in for Rick and just go smaller. Head of the ball, or even Bailey might come in for McCluggage if they're going to, be cautionary with him. So there's always going to be, it's very infrequent that you actually have like a completely static list from game to game. So like we want to get games into Ashcroft. Dev Rob is kind of like the peg that you just put in any different kind of goal, a bit like Kalachi. And I know Kalachi wants to like continue playing up in the forward line, and he's enjoying that, and he's playing well doing that. What a mark, by the way.
Yeah.
Jeez. Tell you what, if what's his face didn't take that ridiculous one, that would be almost a bolt-on for Mark of the Year. But I think it's the selection headaches are good, but it's just kind of like, why worry about them until they're there? And I think coming up, if they want to be conservative with Huey, then bring Bailey in. You can always reshuffle stuff, but I think, just try and go on merit as much as possible.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
I still don't think that Zorko can play every game. Like, I don't think that he can. I think he'll need a rest at some point. Like, he probably won't want one, but he's kind of strikes me as the sort of guy that needs to be safe himself occasionally.
Yeah, a little bit. on form, you can't drop him.
No, not at the moment. But if he goes out and he's a bit tight and his leg breaks off, then.
Well, that's it. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they were a little bit cautious with Huey just because of the injury list that we've already got at the moment. So if he's in any way a little bit proppy throughout the week and still feeling a bit of tightness in that calf, I would be very much inclined to say nah, especially on a hard, quick deck at Marvel. You don't want that. So give him the week off if he needs it. If he's back to normal, because it said it was precautionary. If he's back to normal today on the training track, then reassess it. But Bailey for Klug, I doubt they will go smaller forward line when it's just Danaher and Logan Morris, who's a third, fourth gamer as our tall option. I reckon they'll bring in Darcy Ford or Brandon Ryan, but we'll see.
I think Brandon Ryan would be a better choice for that, just in terms of the idea of trying new things out. We know what Fort gets you, and I think Fort's, he's the kind of player that I think is going to operate better on a run of games, and that's just not going to happen because I just don't think that he's got the ceiling that Oscar has. So, I think generally try and look to the future, because you're better off having better players and having players miss out that have, there's not an amount of drop off. I think we remember talking last year where we were finding that our drop off from the 22 to even the 23 with our sub was massive. And that was that caused us a few issues because we were not really getting a lot out of the sub. And if we had one player or something missing, there was a big difference. If Dunkley missed, then it'd be if one of the defenders missed, if it was, Jack Payne or something. At the time, we were oh no, Darcy Gardner's come back in. Now we don't have that to deal with. So, I think it'll do well for us to have, the fringe players being more reliable. So I'd kind of try and stick with them, but go on merit.
Yep.
And, we want to see Ashcroft playing.
Well, this next question from Ed may be a little bit more difficult for you to answer if that's the case, because we're looking well into the future here.
Is it a quadratic equation? Because I got that in bags, maybe.
No, Ed's looking forward to 2025 and I guess the general round one lineup, because, a few Lions fans like myself have looked ahead to 2025, and I guess some of the prospects, Coleman comes in, Duday comes in, 2 Ashcrofts will be there. So, long term, who's in, who's out sort of thing. And it's hard to...
Long term?
Yeah, it's hard.
Is it what's the round one lineup going to look like, or...?
I suppose so, in a very basic way. He's just... I think the idea that the rookie, these kids that we're playing at the moment, the Bruces, the Shadow Brains, the Sharps, the Loman, all these players are playing really well, good AFL level footy. Are they staying around? Are they bolt-ons for first 22s, or do they make way immediately for Levi Ashcroft when Duday comes back in, Coleman, all that sort of stuff?
I don't think they're not bolt-on 20. They are at the moment, but I don't think they were anyway. And just because you play 3 good games doesn't mean that you're going to be a starter going forward. And you need that squad depth, and that's kind of what I've been saying. I know that Will Ashcroft came in and played from round 1 in the middle. I don't know that Levi will do that. You could see him, play across half-back, and it could be the sort of thing where, we might see him do what Harry Sheasel or Nick Dacos did in terms of start across half-back, have Wilmot and Kadeem Coleman. I think in terms of players that would be bolt-on starters is kind of funny, going back to your original first podcast where you were skeptical of McKenna being in the team from the off. I think he probably might be one that would come out. I could see Duday coming in for Frog, but at the same time with ACLs like that, you need people there to pick up the slack in case something goes awry like it did with Duday, or if they're just not quite ready, or there's a bit of soreness and that sort of thing. So I can see Harry Sharp sticking around and being a staple on the wing.
Yep.
particularly with Jared Berry playing a little bit more inside. I've really enjoyed that.
Wasn't that good to see over the weekend? The last 2 weeks, he's had a lot of inside mid minutes, and that's been really good.
Yeah, he was a bit quieter, I think, or less impactful, but not the sort of game you look at. I mean, he kicked one out on the full, so everyone's going to look at that one. Brilliant. But yeah, like I just think in terms of the lists on the whole for round one next year, I could try and do it, but then at the same time, like, Gardner and Link McCarthy aren't going to be there for round one.
No.
And Link McCarthy would be a bolt-on starter, at least for the next year. But he's probably one that's aging out. Same with Neil. Neil's probably one that's aging out. So, like, when Neil ages out, is that when Levi comes in? Or does Ashcroft take the mantle of that kind of heavy inside player? There's a lot of hypotheticals. Zorko, I've said it the last 3 years where I don't see him in our best 22, and look at where he is now.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably like a circumstantial thing, because I think if Kadeem Coleman's there, he's probably not having the impact that he is. So it's like, what's going on here? Like, so a fun question, but ultimately pointless. But I think I answered it as best as I could there.
I think, I guess just with the way the team started and with the injuries on top of that, it's sort of, there was definitely an era of doom and gloom floating around, but I think everyone's a little bit buoyant with how the kids have stepped in and performed, like that we've been able to test our depth, and the depth has been performing at AFL level, and we've, for the first time in a few years, had a good look at some real kids in the team, because it's been a fairly settled lineup for quite a while, and we've been pretty good injury-wise. So we've run out of luck on that respect, but it hasn't been as, I guess, detrimental as I guess a lot of people thought, and I thought it too. I just didn't think we would be able to, with the way we were performing, and then to add injuries on top, I didn't think we'd be able to handle it. But the guys that have come in have been really good, albeit a little bit light on in terms of their fitness. They've been impacting, they've been contributing and adhering to structures and affecting the scoreboard as well. If you're Logan Morris and now Bruce as well. So, yeah.
I think in terms of that, is like, it's really important, and I know that it's a hard. Sometimes it is something that's forgotten, particularly with Darcy Wilmot, that he was basically a first year player last year.
Yeah.
So, and we had Ashcroft and Fletcher, so that's three. That's quite a lot for a premiership tilt team. It's just, I think that they've come across so assured, and then Ashcroft obviously came out of the side, so particularly when Fletcher was kind of hitting his straps. So if you couple those three and you go, well, Lohman's probably going to be around, and then you go, okay, Logan Morris is pretty good, and then you're like, well, Harry Sharp's starting to play a lot better footy. You're looking at it being like six kind of players that have been drafted since we've been a premiership contender. And I think that's probably the metric to look at it. Look at it in terms of drafting these players when we've been up the top. So to have at least six kind of reshuffle, in the space of a few years is quite a lot. I think a lot of teams as well that challenge for a long time, they don't have that level of emergence.
Yep.
I could be wrong, but I reckon if you look at Richmond's 2017 team and then have a look at their 2021, there might be a few. You look at old mate from St Kilda with the brain thing, Jack Higgins.
Yep.
Yeah, like a few of them, Shea Bolton and stuff that might have come out, but like on the whole, pretty stable. And I think that's probably what would happen. So yeah, looking good.
All right, last question from Nadia that's come through on Instagram. It's pretty simple, and I suppose we've already sort of touched on it. Where do you think Brisbane will finish this year? We've spoken about it on and off over the last couple of weeks, and I'm still more inclined at this stage. I'm not going to let this week's result against an undermanned Richmond sway my thought process too much, because it wasn't too long ago after we beat Melbourne at the MCG, we all thought, oh, we're back here. Only to come crashing back down to earth against GWS. So I still think bottom half of the 8 or that sort of 9th to 12th probably is where we're looking at. I would say anywhere between 6th and 12th, depending on results of other teams. I mean, West Coast just beat Melbourne, so Who the bloody hell knows what's going on?
I'm going to say 4th to 6th.
Sure.
Because why not? Why not have a bit of, positivity? And I was just preaching expectation management, and here I am being like, yeah, it's on, baby.
Look, it's certainly not out of the realms of possibility. We'd need a lot of things to go right, and we'd need to win a few games that we would go in as underdogs in, like another Melbourne at the MCG. But, like I said, we've got some winnable games, but the Bulldogs, they've got fairly decent form over the last few weeks as well. Hawthorn have obviously been a troublesome side for us over the last few years. St Kilda, who the hell knows what's going on with those guys. And then we're back to playing, Port Adelaide at Adelaide Oval, and that's obviously not going to be a walk-up win. We get Adelaide again at the Gabba. There's going to be some tough games. We haven't played Essendon yet, and the way they're playing at the moment is really good footy. We won't play them till the last round of the year, which is very, very strange. For me, I'm a little bit more glass half empty with the 6th to 12th range, but I'd very happily take a 4th to 6th.
Yeah, I suppose, given our really difficult kind of run of games earlier on in the season, it's like, if you compare it to, say, Carlton, where they had a difficult run of games, it's like, and same with GWS, they've had a arguably difficult run of games. It's kind of like, teams are struggling when they're having to back up and back up and back up. And we've already kind of done that. And I know we still have to play every week, but that first handful was bloody brutal, man.
Yeah. And another week goes by where GWS shit the bed, and it just annoys me that they played their best footy against us and absolutely towed us up, which is really annoying. Hey, quick look at the twos. I managed to catch 90% of this game, and they were really, really good. They were fairly inaccurate in front of goal. 8 goals, 16 is what they finished up on. But considering that, the AFL level list has been stretched, the VFL list has been extra stretched. The ball movement was really, really good up until they had to finish in front of goal. The defensive pressure and intent was amazing against Casey. So to walk away with a big win, well, not a big win, I mean big in terms of...
It should have been a big win.
Yes, 8 goals 16 to 8 goals 9 it was in the end, and the last quarter was just peppering away with behinds. It was really like death by 1,000 cuts. So, really, really impressive stuff. I mean, it is the usual suspects that have done the job. Jared Lyons, another 34 touches. Jimmy Tunstall had a good game, and someone we've been speaking about the last couple of weeks, Daniel Lloyd, actually suited up for the VFL team and had a fantastic game, especially if, his first quarter, he ended up with 3 goals. We were speaking about him as a potential mid-season draft pick. The Lions were pushing for that, but the AFL stepped in and said, "Yeah, nah, you can't be doing that." So,
what was the reason? It was he hadn't played the right number of VFL games or something like that?
Yeah, you have to play a certain number of, I guess, upper echelon level games of state league or highest level, and you can put in a request for an exemption, and the exemption was, well, he's an AFL player that is still playing state level footy, and he's been working with us, so he's been coaching. So, but the AFL said no bueno, so that's been sort of shoved on its head. Dev had a really, really good game, 25 touches and a goal. He ended up with 7 tackles as well, so I would imagine he'd be pushing for selection in the next couple of weeks. Easily Kalen Lane's best game for the VFL as well. But yeah, it was the usuals, and there's some boys in there that are just VFL listed players that are going about it nicely. Reece Torrent is putting together a pretty good season in the twos as well. So we'll see, but good to see them get a win, because it's been a while since the VFL team have put together a pretty strong performance. So yeah, especially with the list the way it was. No Jackson Pryor in there as well. No Darcy Fort. So really stretched for numbers and quality players in that team, and they walked away with the win. So bloody good.
Excellent stuff.
All right. Changes you're making in the game against Hawthorn. We've sort of touched on this a little bit throughout the show, but I would imagine obviously Eric comes out, Bailey comes in. whether there's shuffling involved, yeah. All right, you go first, and then I'll see if I can fine-tune my way of thinking here and what's happening.
Yeah, bit of a hard one, eh? Bit of a hard one. I reckon if Hugh comes out, then easy, Bailey goes in. I'm going to throw Brandon Ryan in for Hipwood.
Yep.
But if McCluggage doesn't come out, I'm like, well, who comes out? Probably Brain drops down, but then who goes to sub? Maybe Bruce goes on to sub.
Yeah, I would say it's going to be something along those lines. I would,
with the potential actually of maybe Bailey just has one little dust clear out in the twos, and Dev Rob comes in if McCluggage can't get up. So I don't know.
I don't think Bailey will be playing VFL. I think Fags will get him straight back into the team, but yeah, I think there'll be a little bit of shuffling, whether it's Bruce, Sharp, Brain, or one of those will get dropped or move to sub. And then, yeah, I'd have Brandon Ryan come in for Eric as well. I think we've seen what Fort can do. We know what he's capable of. It's just whether Fags will be happy to roll with a forward line that inexperienced in terms of talls with Logan Morris and Brandon Ryan. He might be more inclined to choose Darcy Fort for a little bit of experience. But we'll see. But I would go for Brandon Ryan as well, seeing as we're blooding all the kids, hand them out.
I agree. We need to get a third sponsor that's for my insanity segment.
Sure.
So anyone there that's got some kind of if they're a ghost medium or a fortune teller or whatever, sponsor the show, and you'll at least get a bi-weekly segment of
insane ramblings.
What stuff have I noticed that ticks me off or whatever, or snap zones or the crypto thing or whatever. So this week, if anyone watched any of the shows earlier on the week, there's heavy focus on the concussion stuff with Jeremy Cameron. Your thoughts on that one, Brooksy?
I think if you're going to fine Port Adelaide $100,000 for doing basically the exact same thing, then you either need to refund that money to Port Adelaide or hand the same fine to Geelong.
Beautiful. So I was under the impression that if someone was being thought of as potentially being concussed, they had to come off the field for a mandatory amount of time. We saw that with short fella for GWS in the prelim last year.
That's right, yeah.
Daniel. There was also the element of when Jacob Wiedering got hit in the mush, went down and then got pulled back up, and it was nothing happened there. I said it at the time, and it ended up getting echoed, create a blood rule for concussion.
Yep.
I don't know, whatever. Have it sponsored by ambulance cover rather than the Red Cross. Get him off the field. But with that, so I'm putting particularly on the couch, and I'm hard on the couch, but seriously, to start the game with Gary Lyon being we're really worried about head injuries and concussion and it's our livelihood. And then to end the show showing boxing, where you've got a guy punching a dude in the face with gloves that have been shown caused more concussion than say the UFC gloves, is utterly, there's no what the fuck. And also Fox Footy shows a lot of the Fox Footy channel, and by extension Fox Sports, show a lot of boxing and a lot of UFC, and they plug it a lot.
Yeah.
And they show dudes getting knocked out a lot. And it's if you're serious about concussion and your image around concussion, don't play those. But they're not going to because they get paid.
Yes.
So it's and don't get it, I like UFC a lot. I think it's great. I love watching a guy get knocked out. If it's Sean O'Malley punching someone or whatever. But it's within the context of that. And I'm not the one going accidents happen. I think the Jeremy Cameron one, he shouldn't have been playing and he should have been taken off the field. And you can't do those concussion tests and stuff like that. It's a different issue, but you can't champion this whole the brain's the most important thing, and then show a dude getting knocked out, 40 minutes later on your show. Like,
it does seem counterintuitive.
I think if the Jeremy Cameron thing is one to go by, every player should be getting concussion tested on Monday morning then. Because if he passed the Scat 6 and he passed the where are you, what's your name, then every player should be tested on Monday morning.
Yeah, that's not a bad shout.
So there's that. I don't really feel like going into the Isaac Rankin thing.
Yeah. I
was, letter of the law, he probably ran, I think they showed 24 meters, but it's like...
That never gets called, and especially, have a sense of occasion. Like, come on.
Well, the sense of occasion that it was Adelaide that got stooged...
Again.
Against Sydney. It was also... They got stooged against Collingwood twice last year. So it's like, they're not doing any favours.
Yeah.
But yeah, what do you do?
Yeah.
Plus, for everyone that's wondering, the bands of grass are 9 meters. They're not 12.5. They're 9 meters.
All right. Well, insane rambling's done for another week.
We're done.
We got a game against Hawthorn this week, who must be said they absolutely bottled it against Port Adelaide, with a game that was very, 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 very hard to lose. They found a way to do that. But as I mentioned before, they have had our number over the last few years and managed to get us the last however many times we've played them. Is a weird one, because when we were, in air quotes here, bad, Hawthorn was the one team we seemed to be able to beat in Fagan's early years. And then as soon as we...
You're stealing quotes from me, man.
And then as soon as we, top 4 team, it's like, oh, well, Hawthorn's the team that can beat us now. It's a strange one. There was the infamous round 1 game at the empty MCG, then that rubbish game down at Tasmania where I think it was Matt Hill's first game calling, and I must be one of the few people that don't like listening to Matt Hill call football, because I just feel like I've been left in the TAB by my dad at 6 years old. And yeah, they've just managed to beat. They walloped us last year at the MCG as well. So I'm worried about this game, if I'm honest, because Hawthorn are not a bad team. The results will show that, yes, they're a bottom 4 team, but they've pushed good teams this year. They've been flattened by teams, but especially on the weekend against Port Adelaide at Adelaide Oval, they did basically everything right.
Yes, they're a team. I think they got some good players. They got some people that I quite like in their team. Guys like Josh Weddle, I like him.
Yep. Will Day's back playing good footy. Sicily will probably come back into the team this week as well.
Well, speaking of people that I like, are you out of your mind? James Sicily. The only thing he did that was in any way funny was that kick on that dude in round 1. But let's not talk about it. Jai Newcomb has had Lockie Neal in his pocket for about 2 years.
Yep.
So, look, I think generally Lloyd Meek apparently is a good player. Bit of a weird name. Lloyd Meek.
Yep.
Meek by name. Hopefully Meek by nature coming into this game. Yeah, there we go. Look, apparently Aaron Phillips is playing for them. No, but I think possibly by law of averages we should win.
We should.
So I'm going by that. I've brought out the quadratic equation reference, so now I'm going to bring out the law of averages. My mathematical brain is singing.
It's we're playing at Marvel, which is a bit of a strange one. Obviously, some MCG exposure would have been great, but we play Marvel pretty well, and it's the first time we've played Hawthorn at Marvel in a while. We either usually play them at the G or Tasmania, and very rarely we play them up here. So Marvel is a bit of a out of the box one, but sure.
It's also the first time we played Marvel this season.
Yeah, right. And we got a few of them on the way. We got the Bulldogs.
We've got, I think, 2 of them. Yeah, 2.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we tend to play Marvel pretty well. So yeah, I think we will win.
Okay, well, I'll take it. In terms of memorable games between Lions and the Hawks, have you got anyone that springs to mind?
I kind of feel like you can't really go past that Matty Eagles game.
Sure.
The inside-out banana.
How good.
I mean, that was so funny because I think we were maybe, zipping 8?
Yep.
Zipping 9, something like that.
Yeah.
And it was like the best team without a win in football history.
Yep.
And then we came up against Hawthorn, and it was Hodgie's first game against Hawthorn.
That's right.
And yeah, we played them off the park. It was good. If you want to catch some funny highlights of that one, look up the Aussie Man highlights.
Is that the one where Hawthorn were wearing that disgusting brown and pink jumper?
No. That was later on in the season where we played them, I think, at UTAS.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's where Rayner got 3 votes and had a bit of a breakout game.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Which that would have been another one because that was also pretty good. But aside from that, games against Hawthorn.
There hasn't been
the one where Jonathan Brown took that mark that I talk about every 3 weeks on this podcast.
That's probably the one I was going to refer back to. And not even that it was a memorable game. It was just it had it had mark of the year in it. So it's the only thing to
mark of the century. So Gary Moorcroft can go. Nah, that was pretty good.
I will be amazed if I see a better mark in my lifetime than Gary Moorcroft. Jamie Elliott on Anzac Day is pretty close, and I think just the occasion of Anzac Day sort of builds it up that little bit more. But yeah, anyway, there hasn't been too many screaming matches between the two, has there?
No, well, I think people would talk about that one down at UTAS, like the Jai Newcomb coming out of his.
Yep.
I was going to say coming out of his closet. Jeez, coming out party on Lachie Neale. That would have been one of the ones they would say they loved.
Yeah.
So, not released too many classic games, and let's hopefully not have a classic game. Have one kind of like the Richmond one.
Maybe Jack Gunston gets the call up as well to play against his old mob.
Who cares?
I just every now and then I remember Jack Gunston played for us, and it's so weird.
Yeah, I find it funny as well because I think Jack Gunston's career has tailed off into a point where what he actually did back in the day is kind of almost a bit lost because I think there are definitely similarities between Jack Gunston and Langford for Essendon.
Yeah, okay.
In terms of game sense, not exactly like contested mark beastos, but just goal sense and stuff. And people are like, oh yeah, Langford's better than Gunston ever was. And it's like, maybe, but probably not. Who knows?
Gunston's got a few flags that will win him that conversation 9 times out of 10 anyway. So
I would agree. Maybe he'll be there. Maybe not.
Yeah, they might make a few changes. I don't know. I'm enjoying, aside from, obviously we're going to be playing them this week and I want to win, but I'm enjoying, I enjoy watching the Hawks play footy because it is always a bit of a mixed bag. But I generally like Sam Mitchell, the coach, and I really like Sam Mitchell, the player. I like Sam Mitchell, the coach. So to see what he's doing with that list, which isn't, it's not littered with top 10 picks or anything like other clubs. I think he's doing a good job with them, and he's pushing. They pushed Collingwood, they pushed Port Adelaide last week. There's been a few others here and there. So hopefully we can wheel out another full team, full quarter performance like we did on the weekend.
I would really like to see that.